Hello again. So, on this edition, educational edition, I'm going to take kind of a weird approach. I'm still going to highlight things from the collection, but all of the things that are going to be highlighted are actually non-Star Wars. But there is a deep relationship between, as you can see right here, the Battlestar Galactica toys and, of course, Star Wars. And most people know how Battlestar Galactica affected the release of the rocket-firing Fett, and most people know the story behind it, but I'm going to kind of tie all that in together with some of the changes that the Battlestar Galactica toys went through, and sort of the timing of things that were developing in the Star Wars world, and, just kind of give you more of a flavor of how intertwined those two franchises really were, at least for a short order of time. So it was, I guess, the fall of '77. Of course, Star Wars had come out. Universal gave Lucas a script. And it was a script that was being worked on, and it was a show that they were developing, meaning Universal was developing, of Battlestar Galactica. And of course, the interesting thing about some of the pre-production work of Battlestar Galactica was actually done with people from the Star Wars crew. So Ralph McQuarrie, in fact, did a lot of the pre-production artwork for Battlestar Galactica, which I always think that's very interesting. And so anyway, so of course there was already an intertwining, staff. Certainly the ideas were very similar. In fact, George Lucas so much thought so that he took him to court. And so, of course, in the summer of '78, he filed suit. And because he said that there was too many similarities, probably a lot of plagiarism of ideas and all this other stuff. And luckily those two settled out of court. But again, and they were similar enough to where George felt threatened by it, So where it becomes even more interesting was, of course, the people at Star Wars in the early part of '78 were already well on their way of developing their concept of Boba Fett. And, whether it's Johnson's drawings or the kit bashing from a gym, and I mean all these people that were involved in the process, came to the idea that this was going to be a rocket firing thing, and of course the Mattel toys, especially the Battlestar Galactica line, was something that was out there that they could kind of model after. Now it was interesting. A lot of the redesign efforts were in August of '78. And that's when the Battlestar Galactica line was actually released. And so, there's 4 main U.S. releases. There's, of course, the Viper, which is probably the most famous one. And then, of course, the Cylon Raider. Okay, and their boxes show them on the back. They come with a, minifig, buttons where you can fire the missiles. And, of course, all the other U.S. releases. Boxes were pretty plain. These are all artwork, pretty cool. And then there was the Scarab, and then the one that didn't really have much traction, but it was the Stellar Probe. A lot of different pieces you could put together and make different ships. I think this was more of a kid's design than anything else. So in August of '78, these all came out. I'm just going to put these. So what was interesting is that, as these were sold, every month was being sold. The first episode of Battlestar Galactica that aired was in September of '78, so basically a month before they had the toys released. And then, of course, once the show came out, it was actually a big hit. The first episode was, I think, a couple hours long. But it was, very good. I know I remember it as a kid. In fact, I had a Battlestar Galactica birthday party. It was so good. But in December, that's when things started to become a little bit worrisome for Mattel. The Consumer Product Safety Commission started noticing that there were a lot of complaints of kids shooting the missiles that came with the toys into their mouths. Now, call Sigmund Freud. I don't know why that happened, but anyways, and it did. And so, of course, that from a safety perspective, that brought up some concerns. And so Mattel had to do something. And so the first thing they did was they had to label their packaging. And so the first label that came out was, it said, do not put in mouth or fire towards your face. Well, anyways, but so this was the first iteration of the stickers that were applied, what's up, Joel, to the packaging. And so then they started releasing these. And then as things continued to get worse, it was in, I guess, early January. This was after the first child, I guess the most famous child, Jeffrey Warren, had passed. That was at the end of the year of 78. Then they had to go to the second phase of labeling their boxes. And so that's where they put another white sticker over the initial white sticker. Okay, so then they decided to, not include missiles. And they actually had a buyback program where they said, if you'd send us the missiles, we'll send you Hot Wheels. Now, by this time, millions of items have gone out, and the ads that were put for the buyback were only in, a very low number of although highly circulated newspapers, so it didn't garner much attention, which you can imagine, because then those missiles are everywhere. The parents are going to try to find them, So anyway, so it didn't really do much. And so then Mattel had to go back to the drawing board and basically redesign them, okay? And they had to redesign them to basically not fire. And so the third iteration of their warning stickers was the red sticker. Okay, now the red sticker said, basically the missiles cannot be launched. They're included. They're glued into place. They also had to change some of the art on the back of the package so that it didn't, insinuate that they could fire them. And so this was the final design or final redesign of the packaging, or at least stickers on the packaging. I've tried to collect all of these. There's a few I don't have. But I've collected them because they're very integral in the history of the Fett rocket firing feature. Now this is where things are, I guess, obviously have been debated. Now, within Kenner, there were some safety issues with the design, whether it was the launching mechanism or the going from the L to the J, whether that J part would break off. They at one point even thought about tethering the missile to the figure, which obviously is a poor design. And it was, Tim Pine. Now, Tim Pine was the vice president of quality and safety at Kenner. He and the lead attorney, or only attorney at that time, Kipling, basically told the president, saying, this is going on over Mattel. We're having some internal safety issues. I really don't think that this should go through. And of course, now this was a month prior to the New York Toy Fair, which is very interesting because the New York Toy Fair had already been, the stuff had been designed for it, meaning they were going to, initially this was going to be a rocket firing Fett. So they had to really scramble around to basically change things. There was a gap in the catalogs where there was thought to be the text for a rocket firing feature where they took out. They did have a mock-up, but they actually used a prototype rocket firing Fett for that, but obviously you couldn't really tell. They didn't have time to make up basically the glued missile in place or filling in the space where the launching mechanism was. So anyways, and it's also interesting that Tim Pine was also a member of the Toy Manufacturers Alliance, or TMA, or something like that. Anyways, that he, along with many others, made this rule many months later, or at least tightened the rule on small missile firing features for kids. Basically, and they killed it. So anyways, so that was kind of little bit of history, a little bit of demonstration of the Battlestar Galactica toys that I have, and the reasons why I have them. So, all right, well, you guys stay safe. We'll see what we're going to do next time. I'm running out. Oh, all right. Have a good night.